Shalom to all. Today's daf is Yerushalmi Brachot daf Mem Vav. We are starting about 4 lines down with the words Reb Simon, and in the Vilna source of daf it's Lamed Aleph Amud Beis, 7 lines up from the bottom with those same words, Reb Simon. And today's daf is sponsored Lili Nishmas Marsh Miriam Sar Basab Yaakov Moshe. Her neshama should have an aliyah. And the Gemara says, Reb Simon says B'Shem Reb Shua ben Levi, Shabbos Shechal Yos B'Chanukah. When Shabbos falls out on Chanukah, that's what we call Shabbos Chanukah. Afal Pisha Ein Musaf B'Chanukah, even though there's no Musaf on Chanukah, Masker Shel Chanukah Musaf, we mention Chanukah in Musaf on Shabbos. Now, Isan Alei, they added on to that, Rosh Chodesh Shechal Yos B'Seicha, when Rosh Chodesh falls out on Chanukah, Afal Pisha Ein Musaf B'Chanukah, even though there's no Musaf on Chanukah, Masker Shel Chanukah Musaf, we mention Chanukah and Musaf. Now, going back to something that we mentioned at the end of yesterday's Gemara that has to do with this, that when Rosh Chodesh falls out on a public fast day, we're going to mention the fast day on Rosh Chodesh. So Gemara says, Rosh Chodesh Shechal Yos B'Tainis, when Rosh Chodesh falls out on a Tainis, Heich Masker Hu Shel Tainis B'Musaf, that's the proper girsa, not Heich Masker Hu Shel Rosh Chodesh, it's Heich Masker Hu Shel Tainis B'Musaf. Where is it that he mentions the Tainis in Musaf of Rosh Chodesh, which means when does he say Anenu? So Reb Zecharia Amar B'Haidaya, Reb Zecharia says that he says it in Maidim. Rav Abba Mamal Amar, he says Ba'avoida, he says it in Ritzei. Rav Avina Amar, Rav Avina says Amar Bracha Chamishes, that's a proper girsa, he says it as a 5th bracha on its own, meaning Musaf of Rosh Chodesh would look like this. We have the first 3 brachas, like every Shemona Esrei has, then the 4th bracha is the bracha of Rosh Chodesh, and then we would have a separate 5th bracha, which would be Anenu. And something similar to this, Amar Rav Abba, Ma'amatzinu B'chol Makayim, Amar Bracha Revius, just like we find in every place that a tefillah of Rosh Chodesh is its own bracha, Afkan Amar Bracha Revius, so too over here, when a fast day falls on Rosh Chodesh, in the Shemona Esrei Musaf, we're going to have that 4th bracha by itself, and Anenu is going to be a 5th bracha. And V'chein Nafak Ovda Ka'adad Rav Abba, and so too a story happened, just like this psak of Rav Abba, it was a tiny Sibor and Rosh Chodesh, and they said Anenu as a 5th bracha. And now the Gemara continues with this, but Makairin, what do they read on a tiny Sibor that falls out on Rosh Chodesh? What is laning that day? Do we lane the laning of a fast day, or do we lane laning of Rosh Chodesh? So Rabbi Amar, he says, Karim brachas u'klalos, we read the brachas u'klalos. This is what they used to lane in a public fast day. This refers to the brachas and klalos of Parshas Bechukaisai, meaning they lane regular fast day laning. But now, Ravana asked him, begin my datun beitainus. Aren't you saying that we should lane the brachas and klalos in order to teach that it's a public fast day? Because you're afraid that if we're going to lane Rosh Chodesh laning on the fast day, people are going to think that it's not a fast day and that they're going to eat. So therefore, we have to lay in the brachas u'klalos to show that it's a fast day. But that's not a good reason, because Ravin al me'ehain, they lie on their stomachs, which means they do tachanon, v'loyadin dehit hanisa, and they're not going to know that it's a tainus. Since they're going to be doing tachanon, so obviously they're going to know that it's a fast day, because we don't do tachanon on Rosh Chodesh, so laning Rosh Chodesh laning is not going to throw them off, and they're going to still realize that it's a fast day. So why not lane Rosh Chodesh laning? So Mevavon based on the top, Amar Le, Rabbi Yossi told Ramana, it's actually the other way around. Loydiacha shakarin brachas u'klalos. The reason why we're going to do tachanon on this fast day, which is Rosh Chodesh, is to show that we're supposed to be laying the brachas u'klalos. The whole purpose of the tainus is to inspire the nation to do tshuva, and them doing tachanon is going to remind them that that's the purpose, and Memelo, that's going to tell them that they should be laying the brachas u'klalos. Now, Rav Yudan Kapod Kaya Amar Kumi Rabbi Yossi B'Shem Rav Yudan Ben Pazi, Rav Yudan Kapod Kaya said in front of Rabbi Yossi, in the name of Rav Yudan Ben Pazi, Karim Rosh Chodesh, that on our public fast day, which is Rosh Chodesh, they lay in Rosh Chodesh laning. Now, come Rabbi Yossi in Rav Yudan Ben Pazi. Rabbi Yossi met Rav Yudan Ben Pazi, and Amar Lehi asked him, At Sham Me'avo Chadam Milsa, did you hear this from your father? Amar Lehi told him, Abba Loi Hava Amar Kain, my father did not say that, Ela Be'ein Tav, only in the city called Ein Tav, meaning only in Ein Tav, when Rosh Chodesh fell on a public fast day, then they would lane Rosh Chodesh laning. Why is that? It's because they didn't know when Rosh Chodesh was, Karin Rosh Chodesh, so they would lane Rosh Chodesh laning. Meaning it's because there was no one in Beit Tav that knew how to cheshbon the calendar, so no one there would know when Rosh Chodesh is, and if they wouldn't lane Rosh Chodesh laning on a public fast day, they wouldn't realize that it's Rosh Chodesh. So therefore, it was specifically in Ein Tav that when Rosh Chodesh fell on a public fast day, they would lane Rosh Chodesh laning. However, Hashar Kol Makaimes, all other places, Karin Brachas u'klalos, when it's a public fast day and Rosh Chodesh, they lane the brachas and klalos. And continuing on, Yirmiyah Safra Shal Rabbi Yirmiyah. Yirmiyah Safra asked Rabbi Yirmiyah, Rosh Chodesh Shechal Yos b'Shabbos. When Rosh Chodesh falls out on Shabbos, but Makairin, what do they lane? So he told him, Karin Rosh Chodesh, they lane Rosh Chodesh laning, and they do not lane Shabbos laning at all. And Amar Rav Chelbai Kumei Ravami, Rav Chelbai said in front of Ravami, Umasnisa Amar Kain. A Mishnah tells us this. The Mishnah tells us, L'chol Mafsikin, we stop regular Shabbos laning for everything, L'Rosh Chodashim, L'Chanukah, U'Lepurim. So we see that when it's Rosh Chodesh on Shabbos, we're only going to lane Rosh Chodesh laning and not Shabbos laning. Now Yitzchak Zecharia shal Rav Yitzchak. Yitzchak Zecharia asked Rav Yitzchak, Rosh Chodesh Echalias b'Chanukah b'ma Kairin. When it's Rosh Chodesh Chanukah, what do they lane? So Amalei told him, Kairin Shloisha b'Rosh Chodesh. The first three aliyahs are Rosh Chodesh laning. Ve'echad b'Chanukah, and the fourth aliyah is Chanukah laning. Now why is it that we're going to lane the first three as Rosh Chodesh? That's because Tadir Rishonei Tadir Kaidem, and Rosh Chodesh comes more often than Chanukah. So first we lane Rosh Chodesh, then we lane Chanukah. But now we have the opposite. Rav Pinchas for Rav Simain, they both say, and also Rav Abba Bar Zmina, Matu Ba B'Shem Rav Dima Demin Haifa, that Karin Shloisha b'Chanukah, the first three aliyahs are Chanukah laning, Ve'echad Rosh Chodesh, and the fourth aliyah is Rosh Chodesh. Why is that? Leidiacha Shaloi B'Harvi Ela Machmas Rosh Chodesh. That's in order to tell you that the fourth aliyah that we're laning is only because it's Rosh Chodesh. We know that on a regular day of Chanukah we only lane three aliyahs, and it's only because it's also Rosh Chodesh today that we're going to lane a fourth aliyah, so that fourth aliyah is Rosh Chodesh. So they hold the exact opposite of Rav Yitzchak. Rav Yitzchak says that we lane the first three as Rosh Chodesh and the last one is Chanukah. These three Amoraim hold the opposite. The first three are Chanukah and the last is Rosh Chodesh. But now we're going to have a question on that. Bar Shalom Yasafra, Sha'al Rav Mana, he asked Rav Mana, Hagaba Atzmacha, think about it. Shachar Rosh Chodesh Shal Chanukah Lias B'Shabbos. When Rosh Chodesh falls out on Chanukah and it's Shabbos, V'loi Shiva Inun Kairin, don't we read all seven because of Rosh Chodesh? Like we said before, that when Rosh Chodesh falls out on Shabbos, we're going to read all seven because of Rosh Chodesh. And since we know that, are you able to say that that fourth one only comes because of Rosh Chodesh? In other words, when it's Shabbos, Chanukah, and Rosh Chodesh, we lane Rosh Chodesh before Chanukah because of Tadir. So how can you say that when Rosh Chodesh Chanukah is during the week, we lane Rosh Chodesh last? Rosh Chodesh laning should come before Chanukah laning. And Yerushalmi Safra said, I asked this to all the Chachamim, and no one gave me an answer. And Amar Li Ramana told him, the Safra. This is a good question, a question of a Talmud Chacham, and because of your question, we're not going to do like what Rav Pinchas and Rav Simain and Rav Abba Bar Zmina said, B'Shem Rav Avdima Ben Haifa. We're going to do the other way around, like what Rav Yitzchak said, that when we have Rosh Chodesh Chanukah, three aliyahs are Rosh Chodesh, and the last one is Chanukah. And the Mishnah said, Tfilas Erev Ein Lo Keva, the Ma'ariv doesn't have an official set time. And the Gemara tells us, Rabbi Mifkad Abdon Amayre, Rabbi instructed to Abdon his Amayra. Now what does it mean that Abdon was his Amayra? So an Amayra is a spokesperson or a Maturgaman. Back in the day, when Rebbe gave shir, he would say it to his Amayra, or the speaker of the house, who would then repeat it in a very loud voice for everyone to hear. So Rebbe instructed Abdon, his Amayra, to say the following: Achros kumet tzibura, announce in front of the tzibur, Ma dematzli, someone who davens Ma'ariv, Yatzli deramsha, he's allowed to daven Ma'ariv ad yoyim hakayim, while the sun is still up. Now this comes from the understanding that Ma'ariv is a rishus and not a chayv. Therefore, someone that's going to be davening Ma'ariv could be mekel and daven mincha, according to Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, which is before plag, and that means that after plag is officially considered nighttime. He's allowed to daven Ma'ariv then, but the sun is still up. As something similar, Rav Chia Barva, Mifkad Amayre, Rav Chia Barva instructed his Amayre to say the following: Achris kumet tzibura, announce in front of the tzibur, Man demasli, one that davens Ma'ariv, Yasli deramsha, he could daven Ma'ariv ad yom hakayim, while the sun is still up. And now another thing which seems to be similar, Amar Rav Chanina said, Meshachani Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yosi ezel pandak echad, Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yosi brought me to an inn, V'amar li, and he told me, Kan nispal Abba shaleli Shabbos be'erev Shabbos. Over here in this inn, my father davened Friday night davening on Erev Shabbos, which means he davened Ma'ariv early. So we see that one's able to daven Ma'ariv early while the sun is still up. But now I'm Zayin Amar Alpha on top. Amar V'Ami Ravami said, Rabbi Yechanan Palig. Rabbi Yechanan argued on this, meaning Rabbi Yechanan said that just because Rabbi Yosi davened Ma'ariv early Erev Shabbos in that inn, that doesn't mean that he holds, as a whole, one is allowed to daven Ma'ariv early while it's still daytime. It could be it was a one-time thing that he happened to have davened Ma'ariv early. But now Ravami continues saying, V'lai habat sarch mafalga alada. Rabbi Yechanan didn't really have to argue on this, meaning he didn't have to say that it was a one-time thing that Rabbi Yosi davened early. Lama, why is that? Shekem by Sefer Mechal HaKodesh. Because we know that when it comes to Erev Shabbos, and Erev Yontif for that matter as well, one is supposed to add on from Chayil onto Kodesh, which means one is supposed to accept Shabbos a little bit early to make sure that even some of his weekday is Shabbos. So it's very possible that Rabbi Yosi holds that during the week one is not allowed to daven Ma'ariv early. But since anyway, a person is Ma'asef Mechal HaKodesh Erev Shabbos, so in terms of Malacha, a person is not allowed to do Malacha, and it's still officially considered Friday, so it's very possible that Rabbi Yosi holds that at that point in time, Erev Shabbos, a person can already daven Ma'ariv because it's already considered like Shabbos in some aspects. And we see something similar to this. But furthermore, the Salkon Chamaraya min Arav L'Tzipairin, Erev Shabbos, donkey drivers would go from the city called Arav to Tzipayrin. V'Amrina, once they got to Tzipayrin, they would say, Kfar Shabbos Rav Chanina ben Daisa be'Iroi. Rav Chanina ben Daisa already accepted Shabbos in his city. Rav Chanina ben Daisa lived in Arav. And once they got to Tzipayrin, they reported that when we left Arav, we saw Rav Chanina ben Daisa already davening Ma'ariv, and they weren't Mechal Shabbos, so it must be that Rav Chanina ben Daisa davened Ma'ariv early on Erev Shabbos. So Rav Ami continues saying, Vaida Amra, this forces me to conclude the following about Rabbi Yochanan, that if Rabbi Yochanan is arguing on something that was said, it's about the following that was said. Dam Rav Chanina said, Mashchani Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yesi Eitzel Pundak Echad, Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yesi brought me to a certain inn. Amarli, he told me, Kainis Baal Abba Shal Motzei Shabbos b'Shabbos. Over here in this inn, my father davened Ma'ariv of Motzei Shabbos while it was still Shabbos. And it's on that situation that Rabbi Yochanan argues and says that just because Rabbi Yesi davened early Ma'ariv Motzei Shabbos once, that doesn't mean that Rabbi Yesi holds that as a whole you're allowed to daven early Ma'ariv while it's still light outside. However, Rami continues, even on this case, Rabbi Yochanan doesn't need to argue. Why is it? Because we have two different sources that show that a person is allowed to daven early Ma'ariv. The Rebbe Mifked Abdan Amayre, because Rebbe instructed Abdan his Amayra, Achros Kumit Tzibura, announce in front of the Tzibur, Ma Dematzli, someone that davens Ma'ariv, Yatzli the Ramsha Ad Yom HaKayim, he could daven Ma'ariv while the day is still light. And Rav Chia Barva, Mifked Amayre, Rav Chia Barva instructed his Amayra, Achrizu Kumit Tzibura, announce in front of the Tzibur, Ma Dematzli, whoever davens Ma'ariv, Yatzli the Ramsha Ad Yom HaKayim, he could daven Ma'ariv while it's still light outside. So Rami concludes that Rabbi Yochanan doesn't need to argue with this statement because it is very logical to say that one's allowed to daven early Ma'ariv. As we see, we have both Rebbe and Rav Chia Barva saying that l'chatchila a person's allowed to daven early Ma'ariv. We're going to stop here for the day, pick up tomorrow and continue to talk about this. For now, everyone should have a wonderful day.